There is a particular city that is well known for hosting some of the most pivotal games within college football. For example, this city that we're discussing has hosted multiple national championships, conference championships, New Year's Eve major bowl games, and the season opener kickoff classics. There is also a local college football powerhouse that has had a very difficult and complicated relationship with playing and hosting games in the city that we're going to discuss in this video today. The Georgia Bulldogs have become one of the most dominant programs in all of college football, winning back-to-back national championships with multiple playoff appearances and conference championships, and a host of future NFL draft picks each and every season. Yet, there is one city that hasn't been too kind to the Dogs. And no, I'm not talking about Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the home of the LSU Tigers, or even Tuscaloosa, the home of their arch nemesis, the Alabama Crimson Tide. I'm talking about Atlanta, Georgia. That's right, just a short hour and 20-minute drive from the friendly confines of Sanford Stadium in Athens, Georgia. In the heart of Bulldogs country, Georgia has suffered some of the most heartbreaking losses in their program's history inside of Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and before that, the Georgia Dome. On paper, any game that's held in the city of Atlanta should spell home field advantage for the Georgia Bulldogs, but in reality, it's been the harshest definition of what many would call a neutral site. In today's video, we're going to break down why the city of Atlanta, located in the backyard of the Georgia Bulldog program, has felt like enemy territory. We're also going to dissect some of the most frustrating and heartbreaking losses in their program's history, and the root cause of some of these crushing defeats, and how the Georgia Bulldogs has overcome adversity to learn from their mistakes to become one of the most dominant programs in all of college football. So if you like this type of content, please be sure to like and subscribe so you'll never miss an episode of College Football Legends. To begin our discussion, we'll go over the numbers, because numbers don't lie. Since the opening of Mercedes-Benz Stadium, the Georgia Bulldogs have a record of 6-5. That's barely over 500 for a program that dominates everywhere else. And if you want to go back to the years of the Georgia Dome, their history of heartbreak and frustration goes back even further. Let's review some of the major games that have been another chapter in their novel of heartbreak in college football. The 2018 National Championship game was held in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia. The Georgia Bulldogs faced off against their arch nemesis in the SEC, the Alabama Crimson Tide. And the Crimson Tide star quarterback Jalen Hurts was struggling mightily in the first half. Despite his dual threat ability and athleticism, he only mustered 21 yards passing the entire game, and making critical mistakes that put the Crimson Tide defense in very difficult situations. In a daring move, head coach Nick Saban benched his all-conference quarterback and future Super Bowl MVP Jalen Hurts in favor of the young freshman Tua Tagovailoa, and his pocket presence and his elite accuracy was able to lift the Tide to a 3-touchdown performance, pushing them to overtime. The talented yet inexperienced Tua Tagovailoa made a critical mistake in overtime that led to a costly sack, putting the Alabama Crimson Tide offense into a costly 2nd and 26 situation. On the ensuing play, Tua rolled out to his left, hitting receiver and future teammate of Jalen Hurts and the eventual Heisman winner, Devonta Smith, deep into the end zone, scoring a touchdown, winning the game in walk-off fashion 26-23. And this delivered a national championship for the Alabama Crimson Tide, and it was one of the most crushing and heartbreaking defeats for the Georgia Bulldog program. The SEC Championship is also held in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia, and this is where the Bulldog pain has been stacked the highest. The Crimson Tide has beat the Georgia Bulldogs in the SEC Championship game in 2012, 2018, 2021, and 2023. In addition to this, the LSU Tigers have also beaten Georgia in 2003, 2011, and most recently in 2019. This is 7 high-stake losses in the conference championship game between Alabama and LSU. To add to further insult to injury and to create more irony, in the following season after that heartbreaking 2018 National Championship loss, the Georgia Bulldogs had a rematch in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, this time for the SEC Championship against, you guessed it, the Alabama Crimson Tide. After Tua Tagovailoa's stunning performance in the National Championship, he took over as the starter for the following season. And Jalen Hurts, he was relegated to the bench as the backup. The Georgia Bulldog coaching staff had immensely prepared to stop the young gunslinger in Tua Tagovailoa, where he was under immense pressure the entire game, and this pressure resulted into an injury that forced him out of the game in the first half. With the injury to their star quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, The Alabama offense was forced to start their second stringer, Jalen Hurts, and he was elevated to the starting position in the second half. Jalen Hurts lacks the accuracy of Tua. However, with his dual threat ability, being able to scramble, hitting receivers on the run, and being extremely difficult to tackle in the open field, his skill set lifted the Alabama Crimson Tide over the Georgia Bulldogs to win the SEC championship. And this devastating conference championship loss eliminated the Georgia Bulldogs from national championship contention. In this particular era, the Georgia Bulldogs have been forced to face some of the most elite teams in the Southeastern Conference Championship, and many of these teams, such as Alabama and LSU, eventually went on to win the national championship. Even these so-called neutral site season opener games haven't been too kind to the Bulldog program. Back in 2011, Boise State. Yes, Boise State went into the Georgia Dome and they stunned the Bulldogs 35-21. And this particular Boise State team went on to be 12-1 with their record. And the only blemish to their season was a stunning and heartbreaking 35-34 loss to the Texas Christian Horned Frogs. And with that one heartbreaking loss, it put the Boise State Broncos out of national championship contention. On the surface, it would appear that the Georgia Bulldogs had a season opener blunder against a lesser Group of 5 program. But the Boise State Broncos quarterback, Kellen Moore, for that particular season passed for 3,800 yards and 43 touchdowns. And this was a team that was only 1 point away from playing for the national championship. For a fan base in Athens, Georgia that bleeds red and black, the city of Atlanta has brought more nightmares than dreams. Let's take a moment to discuss why does this keep happening to the Georgia Bulldogs. First, we need to discuss the environment. People would assume that Atlanta, Georgia is a home field advantage for the Bulldogs. Yet, these matchups are SEC championships, Chick-fil-A kickoff games, and the New Year's Eve Peach Bowl. Opposing fan bases show up in massive numbers. Alabama, LSU, Clemson, and even Boise State, their fans travel. Instead of Sanford Stadium being 90% pro-Bulldogs, Atlanta often feels like a 50-50 split, which takes away that intimidating energy that Georgia usually feeds off of. Second, we want to talk about the weight of these expectations. For Georgia, every game in Atlanta is high stakes. You're not just playing to win, you're playing for championships, playoff spots, and the legacy of the program. These are not regular season games against Kentucky or South Carolina. In most cases, these are make or break situations where the programs will be crushed under the sheer weight of those expectations. And for years, the Georgia Bulldogs have developed a reputation for being so close to achieving ultimate glory, only to have it snatched away in the most tragic fashion imaginable. For example, let's talk about the 2012 SEC Championship. Georgia had seconds left to go in the fourth quarter, and they were trailing 32-28, and their quarterback Aaron Murray had drove the Bulldogs all the way down to the 5-yard line, and Alabama's dominant defense had struggled to stop Georgia in the final minutes of the game. Just as it appeared that Georgia was about to post a dramatic comeback victory and clinch an SEC championship, before they were able to line up for one more play, time had expired, and this loss propelled Alabama to the national championship game, where the Crimson Tide would go on to destroy the Notre Dame Fighting Irish 42-14. Meanwhile, Georgia had to settle for the Capital One Bowl against Nebraska. Atlanta has become a place where Georgia's biggest dreams have become nightmares. And finally, the psychological effects of a road game. Even though Atlanta is just an hour and 20-minute drive from Athens, Georgia, this is still a road game itinerary for the Georgia Bulldogs. Buses, hotel stays, unfamiliar locker rooms, and coming into a massive NFL stadium that feels more or less like an away game than the friendly confines of their home stadium in Athens, Georgia. Comparing this to their arch nemesis, the Alabama Crimson Tide, Nick Saban is arguably the greatest coach in all of college football history. However, what's criminally underrated in his attributes to run the program in Alabama is his ability to prepare his team for these type of road game scenarios. And their road itinerary rivals many NFL programs. So when they go to these stadiums such as the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, AT&T Stadium, they go in there prepared to win. But here's the twist to this scenario. The curse might be fading for the Georgia Bulldogs. Their former head coach, Mark Richt, his tenure at Georgia was summarized by being dominant during the regular season, only to fold when it mattered the most. However, since the arrival of Kirby Smart, they've been able to change the narrative for the Bulldog program. In 2022, in the SEC Championship game, Stetson Bennett threw for 275 yards and 4 touchdowns as Georgia crushed the LSU Tigers 50-30. And in that same season, in the college football semifinal, held New Year's Eve, which was the Peach Bowl, Georgia pulled off one of the most thrilling comebacks against the Ohio State Buckeyes. And as it was 11:59 on New Year's Eve, before midnight, the Ohio State Buckeyes lined up for a would-be winning field goal, and they pushed the ball just slightly outside the upright. That missed field goal by the Ohio State Buckeyes may have been one of the most clutch moments in Mercedes-Benz history for the Georgia Bulldogs, and they went on to destroy the Texas Christian Horned Frogs 65-7 in one of the most lopsided national championship games in the history of college football. Even though the Georgia Bulldogs has lost to Alabama in the 2023 SEC title game, this version of Georgia football has shown that they can win big in the city of Atlanta. At the making of this video, and as further evidence that Georgia has finally broken this curse, they are currently the defending SEC champions as they defeated the Texas Longhorns in Mercedes-Benz Stadium 22-19. So why have the Georgia Bulldogs struggled mightily in the city of Atlanta despite it being so close to home? It's been a mix of extreme expectations, facing elite opponents, and that subtle road game feel despite being in their own backyard. Despite these factors, things are changing for the Georgia Bulldogs since the arrival of Kirby Smart, and he's turned this program into a complete juggernaut, as Mercedes-Benz Stadium is no longer a house of pain, just another proving ground for the Georgia Bulldog program. I want to hear your thoughts about today's discussion. Do you think that the Georgia Bulldogs have finally broken the curse of Atlanta, Georgia, or are they still haunted by the bright lights of Mercedes-Benz Stadium? At the making of this video, the Georgia Bulldogs are set to face the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets for their regular season finale. And you guessed it, Atlanta, Georgia. But this time it's at Bobby Dodd Stadium. And the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets are currently undefeated at the making of this video, with 0 ranked opponents for the entire month of November up until playing the Georgia Bulldogs. We could potentially find ourselves in an epic regular season finale between the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets and the Georgia Bulldogs in the city of Atlanta, Georgia. So I want to hear your thoughts about today's video in the comment section below. And join our community by hitting that subscribe button. And by subscribing, you'll never miss an episode of College Football Legends. Until next time.